Mike, what's going on?
Oh, not too much. I always care, Paulie. I always care. I always care, Paulie.
All right, let's talk football here. I mean, maybe we'll circle into basketball at the end of this conversation, but let's start football. First scrimmage is in the books. We have no idea what happened. We haven't heard from anybody on that scrimmage yet. I know we've asked you before about the quarterback battle. When do you think they will, regardless of when they announce it, when do you think they will make a decision? What is the ideal time in your mind to make a decision?
Now.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope that they've got a pretty good idea, even if, perhaps they haven't officially named it, internally or whatever, but I would have to feel like after that first scrimmage, they've got a pretty good idea of where they're going, what direction they're leaning, and all of those things. But, I think the sooner the team knows and they can kind of move ahead with whoever QB1 is, gets the bulk of the first team reps and can work on that chemistry in practice with the wide receivers and with the running backs and offensive line, I think the better it is for the team as they prepare for week one. I think whoever you have is going to have some level of inexperience that they didn't have to deal with last year. And so there's going to be some growing pains, but the more reps you can get in practice with the first team, I think it helps, alleviate some of that, or at least mitigate some of that learning curve.
We've talked a ton about the quarterbacks and a ton about the offense, and we've talked a good deal about the defense as well. Are we talking about special teams enough? The fact that, this is a team that, at punter, they seem fine. Place kicker was a major question mark, and as you brought up the other day when you and I were talking, let's not forget about punt returner as well. What are your concerns with special teams right now? What's a bigger issue? Whoever's returning punts or the place kicking?
I think the place kicking, because I feel like they have enough athletes on the team and dynamic players that they can find someone to be at least a solid returner for them. I mean, I'm looking at Jonte Cook coming in as someone that could possibly do that. I know Malachi James, who was a freshman last year, is one of the fastest guys on the team and is a track star. They've got a bunch of those types that have some speed and play running back or wide receiver that could step into one of those roles if necessary. The bigger question to me is who's going to be the kicker, because last year Jaden O stepped in, but then he wasn't in full time, so he lost his job a little bit, and then we don't know what Trip Woody is yet, because he hasn't kicked a ball in live college football action yet. So there's huge question marks there. I know they've got a couple of guys that are on scholarship, but if they're going to be as inconsistent this year as they were last year at kicker, that's going to make it even more daunting of a task to navigate the schedule, because you feel like a lot of those games where Kyle McCord was so good down the stretch of games and so clutch and put the team in good positions, et cetera, some of those games might end up coming down to a field goal kick as opposed to, just trying to run the clock out with a lead. And if you don't have a kicker that you can trust, that you can rely on, that makes some of those 50-50 game type of situations maybe 30-70 games or 40-60 games instead.
Looking at the comments in our chat, Michael Antonio chimes in. He wants me to ask you about the offensive line, and there's this thought among fans and some analysts as well that the quarterback may be picked based on the offensive line. Do you subscribe to that? Like, if the offensive line is not up to snuff, there's thought that Ricky Collins is going to be the starter because they want a mobile quarterback. If Fran believes the offensive line is going to be really good, that Steve Angeli will be the starter. How much do you think the O-line is going to dictate who the starter is behind them at quarterback?
I don't think it's quite that simple that if they feel like the offensive line is good, it's going to be Angeli. If they feel like it's not, it's going to be Collins. I think that's a little too simplistic for me, but do I think that the offensive line and how the quarterbacks work with the offensive line in terms of chemistry and protection calls and being on the same page with things, all of that stuff matters. Now, do I think that if they feel like that they have a really good run blocking offensive line, but pass protection is an issue, that all else being equal, they could lean more towards a Ricky Collins? I think that's possible. I just don't think it's quite as simple and extreme as if the offensive line isn't good, then it's going to be Collins, and if it is, it's going to be Angeli. I'm not sure it's quite that cut and dry, but the offensive line is certainly a question mark. They lost 3 starters from the bowl game last year. They brought in 3 or 4 transfers, maybe even up to 5 if I have my numbers right, through the transfer portal. There's a lot of guys there, a lot of former 4- and 5-star prospects out of high school, but also a lot of guys that, perhaps haven't done a lot and don't have a lot of experience at the Power 4 level. So we'll see how all that plays out.
We were talking late last week, and I asked you, I said, of the games away from the Dome, which are the most likely for Syracuse to win? And I believe we settled on Tennessee or Georgia Tech. And you look at the Tennessee right now, Vegas, and Vegas isn't always right, but Vegas has Tennessee as a 2-touchdown favorite. How concerning is that one of the 2 most winnable games away from home, Vegas has Syracuse as a 2-touchdown underdog?
Well, 2 things. One, I think it tells you how difficult the schedule actually is on paper. But 2, I also think it tells you that there's a lot of people and a lot of experts that are looking at Syracuse without Kyle McCord as a team that's going to take a significant step backwards. Now, I have said they could not take a significant step backwards in terms of on-the-field product and talent level and, competitiveness and all those types of things, and still end up with a record that looks like they took a significant step backwards just because of how difficult the schedule is. But if you don't think Fran Brown's going to be hammering the fact that there are 2-touchdown underdogs between now and August 30th to that team every single day, that's going to be brought up, and wouldn't surprise me if that led to some extra motivation when they take the field in Atlanta.
Anything we need to know from a recruiting perspective on the football side of things?
Well, they're still after some 2026 guys. That class is mostly wrapped up, but there's still a few spots left. They've extended a couple of offers recently to defensive linemen and to a defensive back. So it looks like those are 2 positions they're still evaluating a little bit. But largely the focus is on 2027, and they're throwing their hats in the ring for some pretty big-time prospects. They've offered a 5-star player, cornerback out of South Carolina, who is a top 10 overall player in the class. I mean, they are not shying away from anyone, regardless of how highly ranked they are, regardless of what other power schools are after them. Fran Brown doesn't care. He's going after him. And as we saw what happened with Calvin Russell, if he decides he wants somebody, you don't ever think that Syracuse is out of it, that Fran Brown is out of it, despite the fact that it seems like a lot of people are still not convinced that Syracuse got Calvin Russell. He seems to be on a lot of top 10 lists for most likely flips or potential flips leading into signing day. So despite all of that, I think Fran Brown's track record should speak for itself. And if they're going after some big-time fish in 2027, I think that should be encouraging for Syracuse fans.
And quickly on the basketball side of things, Jordan Smith, 5-star guard, top-ranked guard in his class, right? And it's saying that Syracuse is in his top 6. How big of a deal is this, and what kind of chances do you give Syracuse to land?
Well, you got to be in it to win it. So the fact that you're in the top 6 is better than not being in the top 6. There's no question that when you're recruiting a player of that caliber, it's always tough to land, right? Because the Dukes and the Kentuckys and all those types of schools are after them, and they're going to throw their resources at that type of player and everything else. But what Syracuse does have going for it is it's got potential playing time. It has one of Jordan Smith's really good friends in Kyan Anthony on the team. Syracuse has been recruiting him for quite a long time. So he's got a good relationship with the coaching staff. I think all of that helps Syracuse. The biggest thing for Syracuse with recruiting a player of that caliber right now is they have to have a successful season this year. If they have another mediocre 500-ish, not really close to the tournament type of a season, regardless of what you think that's going to mean for the coaching staff, that's not going to speak real well for high-caliber recruits like Jordan Smith. If you go out and have a good season and you're in the NCAA tournament and perhaps win a couple of games or more, then that helps your case with, hey, we're trending in the right direction and this is a program you want to be a part of.
I just saw his top 6. Did you know who's not on there? St. John's. Rick Pitino stinks.
Fire Rick Pitino.
That's right. But, I mean, if you're in the talking with Duke in Kentucky and Arkansas and Indiana and Georgetown and Syracuse, it's you're doing something right. The Reds recruiting has been okay. It's been better than okay.
Yeah, he's recruited very well, both in the transfer portal and out of high school since he's gotten here. Now, I understand last year, that the transfer portal additions didn't work out, but, some of those guys were pretty highly thought of. Eddie Lampkin was certainly someone that a lot of schools went after, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's the nature of how things play out when you've got the transfer portal and you're sort of restocking every year. But he's recruited very well when you look at the high school recruiting rankings over the last, 2-3 years, and then combine that with, getting a guy like JJ out of the transfer portal and some of the guys they got this year. That's worked pretty well. So now, year 3, where it's basically all your guys, now is the time to get back to winning basketball and being in the NCAA tournament.
It's also funny, like, he's got the players now. He's got the talent this year. I don't know if it is this year you put up or shut up, but there has to be improvement in the wins and losses this year. I mean, I know it's obvious, but the talent level is so much better than he had last year.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way on paper. But yeah, it's at some point you got to start winning games when you're playing at Syracuse, right? There's much less patience at a school like this than there is, if you're at a Hofstra or even a Siena where GMAC is, those types of situations. So, there's no question that I think everybody wants Syracuse to win some more games and be back to competitive basketball and back in the NCAA tournament and having the Dome be the electric environment that it's been in the past. And, even those that are critical of Red and have been extremely critical of him, I think a majority of those would love nothing more than for him to come out and prove them wrong and win 25 games and get to the tournament and be a good seed and get back to, what used to be the norm around here.
Yeah. You know what people will say, Paulie, if he turns it around this year? Well, he couldn't have done it with NIL. It's all because they upped their NIL game. It has nothing to do with Red. I feel like right now he's in a no-win situation.
I just don't know if he does turn around. I don't know how people justify all of the horrible things they've said.
For sure.
And it's been horrible.
Yeah. For sure.
It's gone too far in a lot of cases, and it almost always does. But even those that are skeptical or questioning, et cetera, I think a majority are not the ones that are saying the horrible things. It's usually the vocal minority that say all of those types of things and go way above and beyond what the line is of reasonableness and decorum.
Well said, Mike. As always, appreciate you coming on. Enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you again next Monday.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Mike McAllister joining us. We've got to hit a quick timeout. We'll wrap up hour number 1 next on ESPN Radio.